All right. With that said, today our agenda items will proceed with our various distinguished panel. We'll have welcome remarks given to us by our CEO, Dr. William Pinsky. We'll then move on to the overview of FAIMER work in Africa that will be presented to us by our very own President FAIMER, Dr. Janet Maldenovic. And then we will move on to understanding the state of accreditation in health professions education in Africa, a project that we are embarking on that will be presented to us by Dr. Marta vanzanten. We'll then move on to our very own Professor Francis Omaswa that will be taking us through the health workforce healthcare education resources projects that we are implementing and how it will contribute to health workforce globalization. So, and then we'll move on to Tracy Gill, who will be giving us an overview of our support to the various medical regulatory authorities here in Africa. And she'll be then giving us an overview about that. We'll then move on to Anna Iakone, a senior associate at ECFMG FAIMER, that will be telling us about the contribution of clinical exchanges to health workforce development, which is our phase 2 of the session. We'll proceed to an open discussion where we shall have commentaries from WHO Afro, Dr. Sani and Dr. Jennifer Nyoni that will be giving a commentary about our work and vision and priorities in Africa and how they link into the African agenda for health workforce development. We'll then move on to Dr. Georgina. The names are pretty much close to be similar, yeah. So we'll move on to Dr. Georgina from the Executive Director of AfriHealth. We'll have an open question and answer session, and then we'll be able to close. So without taking more time, we'll now welcome our first speaker to give us the welcome remarks. Dr. Pinsky, the floor is yours and you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Faith. And thank you and all the others for organizing what looks like a very robust symposium today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm going to be very, very brief because I know there's so much important information that we wish to discuss today. I've been fortunate in my 5 years in the leadership position at ECFMG FAIMER to have visited Africa several times, in sub-Saharan Africa in several different countries, as well as to attend AfriHealth meetings. And I'm so appreciative of the collegiality and collaboration among the leadership in Africa. I can definitely tell you and emphasize that ECFMG FAIMER see Africa as a very important area in the world. After having been introduced to Africa a few years ago, my comments to colleagues back in the United States and other places around the world basically has been that Africa is the future. And it is apparent to me that our imperatives and goals within ECFMG and FAIMER align very much with those of you who live and work in Africa. We are very interested in promoting quality healthcare as well as quality healthcare and medical education as a way to ensure that our countries have quality. I know that a lot of institutions around the world come to Africa, work for a little bit, do some nice work and help people. I can also guarantee you that we are beyond that. This is a commitment to us. We are with you for the long term and look very much to be learning from you as we help to contribute as well. So again, welcome, and it's going to be a great program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pinsky. We'll then now move on to Dr. Janet Maldenovic, President FAIMER, to take us through the overview, scope, and work of FAIMER in Africa, as well as the plans in Africa. Dr. Janet, the floor is yours, and you're welcome. We don't hear.
Can you hear me now?
Sure. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining us. It is truly my pleasure and honor to tell you a little bit about FAIMER, which is the Foundation for the Advancement of International Medical Education and Research. The idea for FAIMER's original work began now almost 4 decades ago at ECFMG. But it wasn't until 20 years ago that a new organization was created called FAIMER. The vision for this new organization was to expand healthcare education around the world through the education of fellows, hence the FAIMER Fellowship. The first of these fellows began in 2001. The fellowship is now recognized throughout the world. It is 2 years and included these 4 major components. If you can go back to my last slide, Justin. Thank you. Leadership and management, educational methodology, education scholarship, and at the core, a supervised partnered project. Next, over the last 20 years, the fellowship model has been disseminated throughout the world into 12 FAIMER institutes. These are all led by prior FAIMER fellows and all offer the same fellowship program as the original program, but in the local context. The original Philadelphia Institute, since the pandemic, has become a virtual fellowship program. This has increased our reach throughout the world so that applicants from areas where there is no fellowship available can participate and become a FAIMER fellow. Over this time, some 2,000 fellows have completed the 2-year program. Our oldest and largest contingency is from India. But you can also see there are some 380 fellows in Africa who have completed this fellowship. Because India has the longest history, we actually have been able to look at the impact of this fellowship on Indian medical education. Here, remarkably, all fellows have remained on faculty. and many have ascended to leadership within their own medical universities. And many have also been recognized as leaders in the setting of national priorities within their own countries. Additionally, the contributions of these FAIMER fellows have led to the establishment of a new area of academic interest, health professions education. Here, with the development of an Academy of Educators, with new degrees in health professions educations within universities, with a specific journal, and with inclusion of HPE in the efforts of the academic career track, this has been recognized as a new area of expertise. And during COVID, FAIMER fellows have been everywhere on the front lines, caring for patients. But in addition, they have been enormously important in the transition to online education. I'd like to mention some of our former FAIMER colleagues in Africa and the types of projects they have implemented. Here, Dr. Hafi, a rural family medicine physician, implemented a rural curriculum. He continues to teach in South Africa at 2 medical schools today, long after the completion of this curriculum in campus. 11% of the FAIMER projects in Africa engage the community in their own areas of interest. Here, 3 such examples are evident. Dr. Innocent in primary care in Uganda, Dr. Aminken in diabetes care in rural communities, and Dr. Josie France promoting healthy lifestyles in her community. For its next iteration, FAIMER is expanding its efforts and its reach. Here in our global programs, we do have new curricula and a new approach to working with communities to expand needed workforce. You'll hear a little bit about this today. We continue to support our own international medical graduates in the United States and beyond. And we are creating educational resources for the world. Again, you'll also hear a little bit about these efforts in Africa. Most importantly, we are expanding our FAIMER institutes in Africa. So we are no longer just going to be teaching about how teachers teach. We are going to expand our curricula. And we are committed to advancing workforce in Africa, especially in the area of critical specialists in areas of need. In Africa, we know that only 7 of 54 countries have health professions education degrees, as shown here. Given the development of many new medical schools and other professional schools, FAIMER hopes to expand access to this type of education through partnerships in Africa. And if you have not already heard, we have put out a call for interested partners to develop new institutes in East and West Africa. Here, however, you will see that FAIMER is also expanding to curricula that are outside of those that are strictly focused on creating faculty with educational expertise. We hope to support faculty development in areas sound in addition to the use of the stethoscope to diagnose patients, or how to improve the health of their community through the understanding and implementation of translational science. And finally, we do hope to facilitate workforce development in partnership with many organizations. Well, here is our FAIMER team based in Africa and in Philadelphia. In closing, I'd like to invite you to please join us for the celebration of our 20 years of past experience and looking forward to the next 20 years. You may join us virtually on October 20th to the 22nd, and just go to our website for additional information. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the satellite.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenny. That was remarkable. And to all our guests today and our attendees, please look out to our website for the 20th anniversary. Make the click and please ensure to join us in October. We'll now move on to Dr. Marta vanzanten, who is a Senior Associate at FAIMER, to take us through our project on the state of accreditation in Africa. So Dr. Marta, you're welcome and the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm very excited to tell you about a current project we're working on based in Africa about the state of accreditation of undergraduate or basic medical education. So because the term accreditation is used differently around the world, I just wanted to start with a basic definition. For the purposes of our study, accreditation is a process by which a designated authority reviews and evaluates an educational institution or program using a set of clearly defined criteria or standards and procedures on a cyclical basis. Accreditation has many purposes, including verifying that the medical school is competent in the delivery of education, which can help ensure contextual appropriateness, demonstrates that the medical school meets minimum standards, and probably most importantly, accreditation can encourage improvement and the sharing of best practices. Now, there's been a greater need for accreditation over the past number of decades due to a number of factors, including globalization of medicine, the increase in the number of medical schools, students who might leave their country and seek educational opportunities elsewhere, physicians who migrate for training or practice, patients who might seek better care or different care in a different country. Now, accreditation shouldn't just be developed and implemented because of face validity, but it should be based on evidence. And this evidence can help enhance the effectiveness of systems, can help ensure efficient use of resources, and disseminate best practices. Now, FAIMER has a role in accreditation in numerous ways. We provide resources that help disseminate global information, such as in our directory of organizations that recognize and accredit medical schools, or DORA. Here, it's on our website. It's a free resource. You can look up a country and see what the different organizations or agencies are that accredit medical schools and find a little bit more information about them. You've heard mentioned this new developing resource, which will include accreditation and additional information about medical licensure and regulation around the world. We also have various educational offerings, and we also help facilitate global dialogue. For example, through the WHO ECFMG FAIMER Turkey Symposium on Accreditation and Regulation, which happened in 2019. We're involved in various research projects. For example, a newly published article on the growth of accreditation worldwide in the journal Human Resources for Health. We also conduct studies investigating the relationship between accreditation and so this current presentation is to tell you about a new project we're working on the state of accreditation in Africa. So this project has various aims. We want to gather comprehensive summary information on the state of accreditation of undergraduate or basic medical education in the continent. And we hope to inform policy and help disseminate best practices. Our methods are to investigate the systems using internet searches and assistance from trusted sources in the relevant countries. We want to obtain the documents containing the accreditation standards, and then map them to each other to highlight commonalities and help identify gaps. So what we've done so far, there are 49 countries in Africa that have medical schools listed in the World Directory. And through our internet searches, we were able to locate standards for 28 of these countries. Again, these 28 was based on internet investigations only so far, and additional ones will be hoped to be identified using our trusted sources. Now, some of the accreditation standards we found are applicable to higher education and are not specific to medicine. Some were in languages other than English, and some will need verification to see that they have been actually implemented. So our next steps, we need to finalize our data gathering with the trusted sources, and we hope to verify the information we found through the internet search and find more information on these 21 countries where we could not yet locate the system, if there was a system, or find standards if there is a system. We'll need some help with translations. So once we have all the standards that we can find, we want to map them to provide objective comparison across the continent. We want to highlight commonalities, what's being used in one country, how that might be similar to somewhere else, and also identify gaps. With the ultimate goal of disseminating best practices. Very important for FAIMER's work. There's congruence with broader work across the continent. The WHO Regional Office for Africa has prioritized 4 interventions, and we believe that our work can provide baseline data which can help advance all 4 of these interventions. Number 1, optimizing the performance, quality, and impact of the through evidence-informed policies and strategies, aligning the investment with the current and future needs of populations and health systems. Number 3, strengthening capacity of institutions for effective public policy stewardship, leadership, and governance on human resources for health. And 4, strengthening data for monitoring and accountability. Again, we believe that our study will fit well and provide good baseline data to help advance all of these interventions. So in conclusion, FAIMER is a leading source for information on health professions education worldwide. And Accreditation of Medical Education supports these various goals in Africa. The WHO guidelines on transforming and scaling up health professions education and training specifically call for accreditation systems to be developed and strengthened. And our data describing the current state of accreditation of medical education in Africa is needed to highlight these commonalities, identify gaps, and as I mentioned previously, most importantly, disseminate best practices and help inform policy. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to hearing the other presentations and having a dialogue with you about these topics.
Sure. Thank you so much, Marta. Your presentation was wonderful, and really accreditation of health professions education is a key agenda today in Africa. And given the African Union initiative, HAQUA, on advancing quality assurance in higher education, of which medical and health professions education is part. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move on to Professor Francis Owusu's session that is about healthcare education resources, their importance and contribution to health workforce globalization. Professor Francis Owusu is the Executive Director of ACHEST, where our regional coordinating center is housed. So, Professor Francis, the floor is yours and you're welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is one of the most important sessions for this year's AfriHealth meeting, and I'm glad to see that there are many participants who are participating from various places, and we regret that due to COVID, we are not able to sit together physically. Now, the topic for this satellite session is about accreditation. It is about assuring quality, and it is about ensuring that the education that is provided is of the best quality. And education, according to my own view, is the single most important intervention in assuring quality health services for populations around the world. One of my mentors used to say that medical school, an educational institution, is like a factory. If you have a bad factory, you have bad products. If you have bad products, we have unhappy consumers. And we don't want our medical schools to be bad factories. We want them to be good factories, producing the best products about who the consumers are happy. So next slide, please. I come from a background of, I've been deep in this work on global health workforce crisis for years. And among the discussions at various levels was the agreement that since education is by far the single most important intervention, why don't we, as a global community, pool all our resources, educate and train one global pool of health workers whom we share through the WHO code on the international recruitment of health personnel. The need for health professionals to move from country to country is a given, cannot be stopped. We'll talk more about it. But this code, which took us 6 years to develop, is a beautiful document that provides for the welfare of the migrants. It provides for support to the source countries from where they come from, to produce to receive the services of well-educated and highly motivated health workers. So this code is at the center of everything. And I would like to encourage all of us to get familiar with it, to support it, and to make sure that it is implemented fully. Next slide, please. Now, this is just to confirm what I'm saying, that this is from OECD, a movement of health workers. It's increased like 60% in the last 10 years. And there are so many bilateral agreements between countries on moving health workers around. And this is a given which we have to live with and to manage using the code. Next. So after the code, the next important originating from the wisdom of Ban Ki-moon, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations. He had a very soft heart for health and for health workforce agenda. And before he left office, he set up a commission on health, employment, and economic growth. And out of the work of that commission has now come developed a number of key things. This is one of them, the International Platform on Health Worker Mobility, supported by the International Labour Organization, OECD, WHO, World Economic Forum, World Trade Organization, World Bank, and so on. The other outcome of this work, which is not what we are discussing today, but it's important to mention here, is the finding that employing health workers is very positive to economic growth. The health economy contributes significantly to economic growth. And this is important because for a long time, some other people were saying that health is just a cost no point investing in it. And it's a major reason why there has been a backlog on low investment in health, including education institutions in some of our countries. So this group now are promoting, they have a platform. Next slide, please. There's now a compact on safe, orderly, and regular migration. It is about ensuring that we have data on this. We have to ensure pathways for migration, ethical recruitment, investing in skills to facilitate mutual recognition. This is what we are about. That's the main reason why I selected this slide, that the investing in skills development to facilitate mutual recognition and strengthening, of course, international cooperation. Next slide, please. We'll go on. And this is to say that in the SDGs, the health workers are there. It's one of the indicators of the SDGs, which is new. All those things are new. So now I would now like us to come back to accreditation. The two previous speakers, the experts at this. And basically what we want to say is that if we are going to use that global pool of health workers whom we share through the code, we must have credible and trusted accreditation mechanisms. And this is what this discussion is about. And I think these other people will speak more about this, the accreditation of regional bodies and so on. Next. So again, this is about ECFMG requirements. There will be more people speaking about this. Let me go to the next slide, which focuses more about our work. Now, we, together with the, we means ACHEST, the African Center for Global Health and Social Transformation, of which I'm the Executive Director. We have been hosting our moderator, Faith Nawagi, in our office for many years now, and we have entered into an agreement with ECFMG FAIMER to do some work for them in Africa as partners. And what we propose to do is to create together between ECFMG FAIMER and ACHEST, is to create a web-based platform to provide information worldwide on healthcare education, accreditation, and regulation, including both public as well as proprietary information. Next. And the country information will be about undergraduate education, postgraduate education. It will be about accreditation of undergraduates and postgraduate, certification of specialties as well, and visa requirements and registration requirements. So this is what we are working together to generate now in Africa. Next. We are doing a pilot in 12 African countries, and here are those countries. I don't know whether I need to read them, but I think you can see them yourselves there. Look for your country in the 12 countries where we intend or propose to have information put together by November this year. And next. And this is the role of ACHEST in this, is to get complete, accurate country level information. And regarding the accreditation, medical regulation, and workforce demographics, as well as the health systems. So this is really my last slide, but my concluding remarks are that this work is critically important in assuring the health of people. And educational institutions in very difficult situations, particularly for us in Africa. There has been a huge surge of the private sector in medical education and nursing education and other specialty educations. And if we are not able to assure quality, then we go back to that good factory, good products, bad factory, bad products situation, which is going to be a huge problem for countries and for the world, since we plan to share the health workers through the code. So thank you very much indeed for listening to me. Because of this business of virtual participation, some other bigger people, more important people than me, have given me assignments. I have 2 ministers waiting outside this room to talk to me. So I will drop off and try and come back before the discussion ends if possible, but I will drop off now. And it's been a great privilege to work with the ECFMG FAIMER, and also an honor to be invited to participate in this great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Francis. And his talks are always very insightful, but most importantly, we are grateful that we are working with him to create healthcare education resources that are really important to drive the various healthcare education, health workforce development agendas forward. We'll now move on to our next speaker, who will be Tracy Gill, the Assistant Vice President of Programs and Services at ECFMG, that will be giving us an overview of supporting medical regulatory authorities in Africa through the verification of physician credentials. So, Ms. Tracy, the floor is yours and you're welcome.
Thank you, Faith. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I want to start by thanking you for joining us. It's my honor to be here today to talk about some of the ways that ECFMG FAIMER support regulators throughout Africa and around the world by the primary source verification of credentials of physicians applying for licensure within their jurisdictions. Verification of credentials enhances the scrutiny of an MRA's evaluation process and supports these authorities as they make decisions about whom to allow to practice medicine and care for their citizens. For more than 35 years, ECFMG has primary source verified the primary medical qualifications for individuals applying for ECFMG certification, which is a requirement to enter postgraduate training and to be licensed in the United States. In the early 2000s, consistent with our mission to promote quality healthcare, we made this service available to medical regulators and physicians through our international credential services. Today, our credential services support regulators in 23 countries around the world, including regulators in 6 countries across Africa: Eswatini, Ghana, Namibia, Nigeria, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Central to ECFMG's international credentialing program is our electronic portfolio of international credential service, or EPIC. EPIC supports the global migration of physicians by working directly with regulators and physicians to facilitate the verification process. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how we do that. Physicians are called upon throughout their careers to demonstrate that they are qualified to provide safe and effective patient care. Although primary source verification is a best practice for regulatory authorities, it can be a lengthy process for physicians and can cause delays in licensure and ultimately delays in these physicians being able to provide care for the public. With EPIC, physicians are able to build a portable online portfolio of verified medical credentials related to their education, training, and licensure. These physicians are able to initiate this process at any time, building a portfolio that can grow and follow them throughout their careers. Once their documents have been verified by ECFMG, the physician can report on these credentials to any organization in the world anytime they're needed. For regulators, using EPIC enables them to take advantage of ECFMG's rigorous verification processes, a robust applicant support, and our deep credentialing expertise. And because all fees associated with credentialing processes are paid by the applicant Any organization, regardless of its size or resources, can incorporate primary source verification into its physician evaluation processes. As I mentioned a few moments ago, ECFMG has been verifying credentials for more than 35 years. During this time, we've developed a rigorous multi-step primary source verification process in support of this work, communicating directly with medical institutions around the world to verify the authenticity of nearly 1 million medical credentials. I won't go into all of the details of this process today. That is a session in and of itself. But at a high level, this initial it involves an initial evaluation of the credential by an ECFMG credential specialist. During this review, the content and format of the credential are evaluated. Medical school credentials are compared to samples of verified documents in our medical credentials reference library, which is a robust resource that includes tens of thousands of documents and correspondence with institutions around the world. After this initial evaluation, we communicate directly with authorized officials at the issuing institution to verify the document. This work is supported by the contact information in our robust database of more than 7,000 medical schools, postgraduate training sites, specialty boards, and regulatory authorities. Today, the vast majority, on average more than 90%, of our credentials are verified electronically, either through our secure web portal or through verified email addresses. This focus on electronic communications has been extremely important in maintaining our verification services over the last year and a half, as the COVID-19 pandemic forced so many institutions to work remotely and disrupted mail delivery services around the world. Finally, the verification response is evaluated to confirm that it meets ECFMG standards, including that it was completed by an authorized official and returned to ECFMG directly by the primary source. Again, we leverage our reference library, which includes copies of medical school seals and the names and signatures of medical school officials authorized to verify credentials. To give you an idea of the breadth of ECFMG's credentialing services, in 2020, ECFMG sent requests to verify approximately 60,000 credentials to institutions in 180 countries. These data show the top 10 countries with which we verified credentials, with India, the United Kingdom, and Pakistan accounting for just over a quarter of the credentials we sent for verification. As you can see, there are a number of countries in Africa on verification of credentials. Looking more specifically at the regulators we work with in Africa, over the past few years through EPIC, we have sent reports to our partners there on credentials issued by institutions in more than 135 countries. Physicians seeking licensure in Africa come from all around the world. As I mentioned earlier, the structure of EPIC supports both physicians and regulators by making primary source verification accessible on a global scale. We are also dedicated to supporting our regulatory partners in many ways beyond the verification process. First and foremost, in ECFMG FAIMER, regulators have a partner who shares their vision. As a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting excellence in international health professions education and quality healthcare, we understand the importance of a regulator's mission to protect patients and improve medical education and practice. With more than 6 decades of experience evaluating physician credentials and more than 3 decades of primary source verification, ECFMG has developed unmatched expertise in this area, as well as long-standing relationships with thousands of medical schools, regulatory authorities, and other entities worldwide. And we work with our partners to help them leverage this expertise. One of the ways that we support regulators is through 2 resources we make publicly available: the Reference Guide for Medical Education Credentials and the ECFMG Sponsor Note in the World Directory of Medical Schools. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about those on the next slide. Our partners also have access to a number of dedicated teams to support their work. First is our client services team, who works closely with regulators to incorporate primary source verification into their registration process. We work with them to understand how registration works, where in the process verification should happen, and what types of credentials should be verified. All of this informs special instructions that we develop for regulators' applicants and prepares our customer service team to provide support to applicants throughout the process. Our client services team also works directly with regulators to resolve applicant issues and connect them with experts across ECFMG FAIMER to help them answer questions or provide any support that they need. One such group of experts is our medical education resources team, who serves as primary liaisons for institution officials and as subject matter experts on education, training, and licensure in their assigned regions. This team regularly provides support for our regulatory partners to answer their questions about specific medical schools, medical education or licensure systems in various countries, and to investigate and resolve issues impacting the verification process, such as institution closures, war, or political instability. Another resource is our special investigation on behalf of regulators.
We seem to have lost our speaker. Tracy, are you able to hear us? Tracy, we lost you a bit. Could you unmute and finish?
Yes, I'm back. Apologies for that. Technical difficulties. As I think I was mentioning, the two resources that I'd like to highlight for you that we make available publicly. The first is the ECFMG sponsor note in the World Directory of Medical Schools. The sponsor note communicates whether graduates of a school that is listed in the World Directory are eligible for ECFMG certification, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a requirement to enter postgraduate training and be licensed in the United States. If graduates of the school are eligible, the note will also include the range of graduation years for which the school met ECFMG requirements. In terms of those requirements, there are several, including the school must be recognized as a medical school by the government where it and its branch campuses is located, that the degree awarded to graduates of the school meets the requirements for medical licensure in that country, and if accreditation is required by the government, the school must also be accredited. The second is the reference guide for medical education credentials. So in addition to being a graduate of an eligible medical school, a physician also must demonstrate that they have received the degree required for medical licensure in that country. Through the reference guide, ECFMG publishes the degree title of the final medical diploma by medical school and graduation year that meets this requirement. The sponsor note is available in a school's listing on the World Directory website, and the reference guide can be accessed through the resources section of the ECFMG website. So I hope that you've enjoyed learning about our international credentialing services, which is just one of the many ways that ECFMG FAIMER serve as a globally connected resource for medical regulators. I want to thank you for your time today and invite you to contact me with any questions or inquiries that you have.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy. And your talk really brings out something. You know, here in Africa, we always talk about, okay, mobility. People always think about migration in the opposite side. But from Tracy's talk, we really see that we have migration coming into Africa. And I think, dear colleagues, it's important that we source verify that they are who they say they are. They are who they say they are, even in line to their training. And such services are those that we are offering to the various regulatory authorities that authorize these people to work in our countries and all that, to ensure that they certify someone who they really know that they're saying the right thing of who they say they are. I would also want to point you to the World Directory of Medical Schools. I know many of you know it as a resource for the World Federation of Medical Education, but I would like to highlight that we maintain that for WIFME, so that's why we are able to talk about it today. So thank you so much, Tracy, for your talk. We'll move on to our last panelist from this session, who is Ms. Anna Iacone, who is currently the Senior Associate at FAIMER, to take us through clinical exchanges and how they contribute to health workforce development. So Ms. Anna, the floor is yours and you're welcome.
Thank you, Faith, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And I would like to extend a special thank you to the AfriHealth's leadership for this opportunity and for the opportunity to partner with your esteemed organization on Gemex Africa Student Exchange Program. We really appreciate your support throughout the years. Before talking about clinical training and Gemex Phase 2, I do want to introduce to you what Gemex is. So Gemex is a student exchange program, and we facilitate international exchanges through the development of multilateral partnerships among international medical institutions. And it's these institutions that can offer student exchange placements and exchange offerings are available to those international students whose schools participate in Gemex. Now, with all this going on, student mobility and COVID-19, so student mobility and the program has ceased at this point in time, but we hope to resume it when things get better. But during this time of the pause on the Gemex program, we have the opportunity to reimagine Gemex. So since October 2020, Gemex integrated with FAIMER and is one of several FAIMER global programs. As Gemex aligns with FAIMER's activities and missions, Gemex's future focus is on clinical exchanges as a way to contribute towards workforce development through clinical training and specialty areas of need. Next slide, Justin. So these are all of the Gemex global partners. We established 52 medical institutional partnerships located in 30 country locations. From January of 2014 through December of 2019, we facilitated 394 student exchanges. So you see a lot of color going on the map. So the color represents a network of partner institutions that are joining together for the exchange of their students. And then, so what we did was we developed partnerships with medical institutions such as AfriHealth, the Eastern African Health Professions Educator Association, the colleges of ophthalmology and pathology, and also we have a regional network in Southeast Asia through a partnership through the Southeast Asian Regional Association on Medical Education. So as you can see, there is a lot of networks in the African region. And I do want to point out that the pink pins on the map, so these are 13 institutions that are member institutions at AfriHealth that are offering virtual student exchanges for the health profession students, which is going to be a focus on interprofessional education core competencies training. So that was launched in June of 2021. And we are very pleased about our progress we have made in Africa. And I would be remiss not to acknowledge my colleague and friend, Faith Nwaji, for her leadership in developing significant partnerships for the Gemex Africa. Faith and her colleague, Fiona Ashba Kenwa, who is also based in Uganda, are two incredible leaders doing great work for all of us as we work with our networks and our organizations. So thank you, Faith, and I have to say congratulations to you.
Thank you.
So our aim is to continue to strengthen our wonderful partnerships to advance regional workforce development through the clinical exchanges, beginning in the African regions, and then to further strengthen all of our partnerships around the globe to align Gemex activities, FAIMER's activities, and ECFMG activities, and align them with the work that is going along with our partners. So how did this all begin? We started to have conversations around the South-to-South student exchange model, regional exchanges, when we were at a conference, a tough conference in 2015 in Johannesburg. And when we began to speak with having discussions with African organizational leaders and institutional leaders, we saw a great momentum around developing a South-to-South student exchange model for Africa students getting their training on the African continent. And so then we started to develop significant partnerships, and we executed MOUs with institutions and medical organizations. And then in 2017, we launched the Gemex Africa program, and the vast majority of those exchanges are at the undergraduate level of health professions education, and 202 exchanges were conducted as of December of 2019. So now I want to focus a little bit on the colleges of pathology and the College of Ophthalmology, since our focus is now pivoting towards clinical exchanges. So through our partnership and the respective member institutions, we were able to overcome significant barriers associated with international clinical exchanges related to visa and licensure issues, medical regulation, ethical considerations, considering academic merit, and for the resident physician to have access to an international clinical opportunities with hands-on patient contact. So this is what we learned and why we were successful. That we established good and trusted and accountable partnerships with the colleges and the member training institutions that offered clinical training at the postgraduate resident physician level in the region. What was on our side is visa reciprocity across the region, where there are no visa restrictions that limit hands-on patient care or clinical skill development and patient contact. So every one of our resident physicians were able to gain hands-on clinical training because they were able to secure a temporary medical license, and they met all the medical regulatory authority requirements. And what was really unique about working with this group is the harmonization of curriculum and the quality training standards that are being applied by the respective training institutions. The colleges work really hard to harmonize curriculum across the region of Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa, and it really makes this very unique. And so from that, the students were able to receive quality training. 87% of the ophthalmology exchange residents received academic credit, and 75% of the pathology resident physicians received academic credit. And the ophthalmology residents had hands-on patient contact. And this is important information when considering clinical exchanges or clinical training programs for workforce development in regions of Africa, to better understand the landscape of medical education and clinical training in the region. So here's a map of Gemex Africa. We have 30 institutional partners in 14 country locations, with 55% of our partner institutions participating in several of our Gemex African networks. So when we talk about health workforce, we want to make sure that we're using the correct definition that is set forth by the WHO, defined as all people engaged in actions whose primary intent is to enhance health. So why are we doing this? So one of FAIMER's missions is to support the education of physicians and other healthcare professionals worldwide. And FAIMER Global Programs is committed to integrating our international partnerships to advance healthcare professional education and workforce development. Gemex will diligently meet the missions and aims and standards of FAIMER, of ECFMG, of all the organizations and institutions with which we partner. So Gemex Phase 2 clinical exchanges. So here are the 3 questions that we are asking ourselves as we look to specialty specific areas of need. And so we ask ourselves, which countries in Africa need specialty clinicians and skilled healthcare workers? And what are those specialty areas of need? And where are the training institutions offering specialty training in a specialty specific area of need for clinicians and skilled healthcare workers to get that training? And which institutions don't have the specialty training needed to develop clinicians and skilled healthcare workers to serve their communities? And so we're going to be asking this question not only amongst ourselves internally, but we are going to be intentional and deliberate and reach out to our organizational partners and institutional partners to answer these questions. Next slide. And so we were looking at ophthalmology as a case study. That's not to say that we're not going to look at other specialty areas of need. But this is what we learned from a recent article from the British Journal of Ophthalmology. And what it stated was that cataract was one of the most common cause of blindness, and that sub-Saharan West Africa had the highest proportion of blindness compared with any other sub-Saharan Africa sub-region. So we know that cataract surgery restores eyesight. And what we learned is that there exists superb clinical training in cataract surgery on the continent. And we also learned that sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, is in need of specialists. And so here are our Gemex partner training institutions in ophthalmology. And what we saw was that 54% of the Gemex exchange resident physicians pursued international training in cataract surgery. And 46% of the cataract training completed by the resident physicians was completed at Lighthouse for Christ Eye Center in Mombasa, Kenya. And they all received academic credit and had hands-on patient contact. And so we ask ourselves, are there other institutions like Lighthouse that are offering superb clinical training in cataract surgery to scale up workforce development in cataract surgery? Again, I'm just using one example of a specialty area of need, and we know there are many, many areas. And also we'll be talking with our partners and with the pathology group as well. So this is just to highlight where we are going with the Gemex program, and certainly we are not going to go it alone. We're going to do this together, thoughtfully and intentionally. Next slide. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all of our partners across the continent. We certainly could not have done this without you, and we are learning so much from you. And we look forward to a continued partnership to do really good work on the continent. So thank you for this privilege and this opportunity.
Within the region. And quite frankly, colleagues, we've been able to or they gain knowledge that is applicable back home and continent. And students are able to benchmark skills that they can apply back home because of quite a similarity in healthcare systems here, but also most important, and there is strong enthusiasm on the continent for people to work together, to move together and advance further. Our interventions are not only directed to the medicine world. We've seen such a question coming up in the chat. Through our programs, we've been able to work with the undergraduate training for the nursing, the pharmacy students, the laboratory medicine students, and we hope that we can advance to various domains of health professions in various sectors. But it's important for us to start from somewhere and then move into the waters when we know what we are going into. So with that said, we've come to the end of our distinguished leadership presentations. And thank you so much, our panelists, for taking us through and giving the highlight of what our priorities in Africa are. And it's so much clear now to all of us and to the audience that our priorities are in health professions, education, health workforce, clinical skills development, supporting of medical regulatory authorities, advancing accreditation of health professions education in Africa, and to give a highlight, FAIMER programs are not really focused on educator of any domain in the health workforce. You're very welcome to apply. Also, as we expand in Africa through the East African Institute, as well as our Northern African in the Mediterranean region, and much as it's on the African continent. And we will have commentaries from Dr. Jennifer, WHO Afro Health Workforce, and Dr. Sani as well is here with us. Dr. Jennifer, could you want to come in and make a commentary about our work and our priorities and how they fit it into the regional agenda? So Dr. Jennifer, you can unmute your mic and then you can be able to present. First, could you enable Ms. Jennifer's microphone to be able to be heard? All right, she's on. Ms. Jennifer, the floor is yours, and yeah, you're welcome. But you're muted. Could you unmute? All right, perfect.
Everything is disabled from your end, so I'll just speak. Thank you. I'm Jennifer Nyoni, as Faith has said. I'm the acting team lead for the Health Workforce Unit in the Regional Office of World Health Organization based in Brazzaville. And for purposes of those who may not know, our region is responsible for 47 countries of the continent. And it's a pleasure to be on this satellite discussion. As Faith has said, I have with me Dr. Sani Orokofa and the others that may have joined from based in the other sub-regions. We just also comment that I'm told I can now turn on my video. Yeah. I may have to, okay. Touch on the technology there. Yes. Where was I? We've been having preliminary discussion with the Faith and the team on the possible areas of collaboration. And I think this afternoon has helped us to further grasp what FAIMER is doing and the interest in the region. As WHO for ourselves in the whole area of health worker education, we have the mandate to support countries in all these areas. And so, except maybe facilitating migration, instead we try to help countries to see if they can keep, but we know the reality is that they do migrate, so we do help them to manage it so that it's not at the expense of critical care in their countries. And hopefully they can also make their countries places where they can attract expertise and keep what they have and even expand on the base. So in all those presentations you've made, as we've said with Beth and yourselves before, I think we talked with Gemex, if I remember. Our interest, of course, is in health professions education based on what you are able to do. I think there we can discuss further how we can interact. The other area most interesting to us is the areas of accreditation, and we do help countries to strengthen that capacity on how they can strengthen their accreditation capacity, the training institutions. We also do help countries to move away from the traditional curriculum to competence-based curriculum. And for example, we did recently, for the first time in the area of ophthalmology, we have produced a regional competency-based prototype curriculum that countries can adopt and adapt in their countries. So this is all, just to give you an example of what we are able to do. And we also, in different areas, now we're talking, for example, with oral health and mental health, etc. So as WHO, we are very keen to talk to you, partners on these areas. We also help them to, you talked about issues of medical schools and programs strengthening their capacity. That's also how do we best help the area of accreditation, of improving regulatory capacity. Although I noticed for you, the focus more is maintaining records with the regulatory authorities, but for us, it's also how to help them to be able to enforce or promote the mandate that they have. So really, it was with keen interest that we've been listening, and I think in the coming weeks, we shall be able to discuss bilaterally how we can confirm some of the possible areas. Looking at some of the presentation, even on the one on the documents, I think it's the clinical practice. What I missed to see, I saw you do student exchanges, but for example, one of the needs that we have from countries is the faculty exchange. For example, we have a request right now from one of the countries, and we are going to talk to you, Faith, and your team on whether that's an area that you can do to support on faculty exchange, especially on some of the younger schools. I almost said baby, but younger schools that are just in their infancy, and they are really looking for how they can strengthen the capacity, and they're keen even to have exchanges of faculty in some of their programs. So those are some of the things that, based on what you presented and what we heard before, really will give us an interest on how at our next discussion we can firm up on some of the areas of collaboration in those areas. So I think very briefly, not to hold the discussion, those are some of the things I can pick, but really in most of those areas we will have an interest, and it will be the other bit is, the one on the database, keeping up. We have very good relation with the WFME, so it is interesting to note that you are one of the key partners with them. So as we discuss with Gordon, maybe those are some of the things that we can also see how do we work in that area of evidence and knowing the capacities in countries on specialist education, for example, or even the undergraduate and some of the postgraduate programs. So in short, it's with keen interest that we've been listening, and I think there's a lot of potential in how we can discuss further and see how we can work together and collaborate on some of this. So I think I'll
Thank you
end here.
so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Jennifer. And we are delighted as ECFMG FAIMER team to learn of you. Your positive interest to garner more support, but also participate.
Good evening to all of you. It's been wonderful hearing the great work that FAIMER is doing for the world and for Africa. For us in AfriHealth, Africa, and we see students as very vital in our pursuit, and that has informed our partnership with FAIMER over the years. And our partnership dates back to 2016 when AfriHealth was established. So FAIMER is a foundation partner of AfriHealth, and we really take them with all the seriousness that this partnership desires. And we've been working together, and for this year, we decided to really pilot a different approach to the student exchange, that is the interprofessional education, because that is the focus of AfriHealth, working together with all the various professions. You see that the people on the satellite, they're complaining about, they were hearing only doctors, only medical. They said, what about us? What about nurses? AfriHealth focuses on all these people. That is why the new focus. And this time it is virtual because of the COVID. And we know it's going to be a success. And so we'll continue to partner with you, not only for this year, but we'll continue to do that. And NIH is funding us, and we are very grateful to them for the funding that has enabled us to really continue with this partnership. And I must also say that FAIMER is not only partnering us on student exchanges, they've also worked together with our student advisory subcommittee to set up a student group for the future of AfriHealth. And so we've even got some interim executives who are going to really help us continue with this group. As I end, in my engagement with Anna and then Faith, I asked about having an institute in West Africa. So I would really want to hear that being addressed here, because that is an interest to me, because AfriHealth is in West Africa. We are in Ghana, Kumasi, and we really want to see that.
Thank you so much, Ms.